This week, we try to reassemble the broken pieces of our childhood after watching Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And along the way, the only question we have to ask is, why, George Lucas? Why? This is Force Fed Sci-Fi. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is sure to be another thrilling edition of the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. I am your host, Chris Rupp, and I am joined with my co-host,
Sean Culp.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us on ripping off the Star Wars Band-Aid.
Ripping off the Band-Aid?
We are talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the start of the Star Wars saga.
The start of the saga, the beginning of the pain.
Oh, man. Not so much the pain. I mean, it's the prequel movies, not the original. The originals we still have fond memories of.
We do. It's a perfect notion of life. You have some ups and downs.
Before we actually rip off this Band-Aid in full,
yes,
we're going to do a little plot summary of it. Now, this movie has been out for 20 years, so that statute of limitations is 5 years. It's done. Y'all have had time to see this.
Sorry, man.
So, like we said, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is the beginning of the Star Wars saga. The Jedi are strong. They are the peacemakers. They are helping keep the galaxy free and democratic. We meet a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is still a Padawan learner, under the tutelage of Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi Master. And a tiny planet named Naboo is about to become engulfed in a literal trade war. And in a distant corner of the galaxy, a young boy is waiting to learn his destiny amidst a growing threat. Now, we should note that we are not doing a complete overview of all the Star Wars films.
No.
We would be here for 4 hours, and I don't think anybody has time to listen to two jamokes talk about 8 films for 4 hours.
But with that being said, we are going to break into the Clone Wars and et cetera in later days. That's the future when it does come up.
I've now retooled our list a bit. So the only Star Wars film after this is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So we will be doing the main saga in order. And once we get done with those, we will go in and do the standalone films if there are more to add. Because at this point in recording, there is only 2. There's Rogue One and there's Solo. So if more get added, we will certainly add those to our list. But for now, this is the film you're getting.
So let's start us off.
All right. So
this film
was written and directed by George Lucas. Surprise, surprise. Who wrote the original films and directed A New Hope. And he came back with Episode 1. He wanted to do the prequel films. And he kind of had to work backwards from the original films, because if you watch and listen closely in A New Hope, Luke and Obi-Wan talk about quite a bit of things that happened that we don't get to see. He mentions the Clone Wars and that Obi-Wan was Anakin's master. He taught him the Jedi arts. But we don't get a ton of that in Episode 1.
No. It's completely... We get that in 2, but 1 is more like... It's like a clean slate.
Yeah, Lucas definitely had a clean slate to work with on this one. And
he's setting the precedent for the Star Wars universe.
Well, I would hope that people don't judge the entirety of the films based on Episode 1.
Yeah, well, that is
We're going to do our best to limit our criticism to just this movie itself.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to compare it to either the original films or movies that came later in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
That's the problem when you add something to a franchise and a media base that's as beloved as Star Wars. People can't help but compare it to previous entries.
Totally. And there's just been so much work on it to compare to. So we will try to analyze it as a film, a sci-fi film, the structure, direction, etc. And see where it goes.
So, Sean, who's starring in this movie?
Starring in this film is Liam Neeson playing Qui-Gon Jinn.
Ooh.
Yes. We have Ewan McGregor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was probably one of my favorite castings for this because he looks like Alec Guinness. Sounds like him. We have Natalie Portman, a young Natalie Portman, as Queen Amidala.
So these 3 actors, they all kind of were rising stars in the 90s.
Yeah. Schindler's List for Liam Neeson.
Mm-hmm.
And that Train Spotting for Ewan McGregor?
Yes.
And then I don't know for
Natalie Portman did. She was in Heat.
She was?
Yeah,
What?
she was Al
With Al
Pacino's
Pacino?
stepdaughter.
No way. I got to see that again.
You haven't seen that again?
I've seen it. Not again.
So, yeah, I think that's our non-sci-fi movie recommendation of the week is Michael
Heat.
Mann's Heat.
That's a solid
If you have
flick.
not seen Heat, people, you are doing yourself a disservice.
That's a De Niro Pacino, baby. You get to see Al Pacino just,
I just love De Niro's line in it, like, you know what I'm talking. There's a dead man on the other end of this phone. I love that line. Ooh,
that diner scene.
I
is
get
one
all
of the
tingly
best.
watching that. He's like, "There's a dead man on the other end."
All right, Mr.
So we
Dead
got
Man.
3 rising stars, and then we have
A young
Jake
star.
Lloyd as Anakin Skywalker, an unknown at the time, right?
Yep, we have Ian McDiarmid. He's Emperor Palpatine,
Well, he's overly British, so I
So
think you
British.
can get away with pronouncing it either way.
and he's a pretty good shot. He actually was the original Emperor.
Mhm.
And Jedi, we have Anthony Daniels playing C-3PO, Kenny Baker as R2-D2, Pernilla August as Shmi.
Shmi.
And then we have the
Did
Frank
you watch the movie?
Oz.
You're mixing up character names here.
I guess so. It all blended together. And then we have Frank Oz as Yoda.
Yeah. In addition to that, we have Samuel L. Jackson as Mace
Yes.
Windu. With him and the head of Queen Amidala's security team are apparently the only 2 black men in the galaxy.
George Lucas finally listened to the criticism.
There's
Instead
more-
of one,
He was
he's
like, "There's 2 now. You can't say anything. I've added another one."
2 black men.
There are 200% more black men than there were in the previous movies.
And they actually, and he's like one of the most logical guys and does some pretty bad, good stuff.
Also, too, we have Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks. I have to mention him. Also, in kind of like cameo roles, we have Sophia Coppola and Keira Knightley as Queen Amidala's handmaidens.
Yes.
So George Lucas kind of throwing a solid to his goddaughter, Sophia Coppola. It's like, listen, I know you had a rough go of it in The Godfather Part 3, so I wanted to give you something that's like a steady paycheck.
That's right.
And then, and it's remarkable how much Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman look
That's
alike
insane.
when they have their makeup on. I could not tell. Unless somebody pointed it out to me and say, "Oh, that's Keira Knightley," and there's Natalie Portman, I wouldn't know. I wasn't able to tell.
I didn't know until the end scene where they're convincing them to join,
Like
the
they're
Gungans, because I'm like, oh, there's Portman. She's right over there. All right, but I'm like, these guys are so alike.
And then rounding out the casting, we have Ray Park as Darth Maul.
Ooh,
Although his voice was not used
no,
in the final film, he was redubbed by Peter Serafinowicz.
and it worked. That
It
voice
worked,
is
yes.
very nice. It fits.
Yeah,
the
Ray
face.
Park's actual voice is quite squeaky,
Yeah,
and you needed something a bit more menacing.
it would be like me being the voice of Darth Maul.
Well,
just
this is like
when we're-
recasting or redubbing David Prowse's line reading in A New Hope,
yeah.
because David Prowse was the man in the Darth Vader suit.
Oh my
And then there's
god,
behind the scenes footage of him speaking.
it's amazing.
It is awful.
If you want to watch it, just think, oh my gosh.
He is
I love
reading
it.
the lines like he knows he's going to get redubbed after the movie's over.
Yeah, I love it. I am your father. So
Like,
no,
really?
no.
Are you really my dad? Because it doesn't sound menacing enough. I'm not convinced.
So, who else we got on this puppy? We got music by John Williams.
Oh, the great John Williams. Which I just have to say, if John Williams passes away, because he is rather old,
He is.
I will be inconsolable for days. The
Really?
man wrote the music of my childhood.
He wrote. Oh, and this film, Duel of the Fates, is
Ooh.
incredible.
Well, we will definitely get into that. So, music by John Williams, who returns to score another Star Wars film.
Check it out. Get the album. It's a good album.
Mm-hmm.
We've got cinematography by David Tattersall.
Which is another British-sounding name.
It's edited by Paul Martin Smith and Ben Burt.
Ben Burt, who did the original sound design in the Star Wars films. So he also did the sound design for Jurassic Park. So we have Ben
Ooh.
Burt to thank for a lot of our childhood sounds.
He is the man of sounds.
I don't know a single kid who didn't play with a lightsaber who made the whooshing sounds.
Whoosh.
Thanks to Ben Burt.
Thank you, Ben Burt. You are the reason why. Vroom. Production company Lucasfilm, distributed by 20th Century.
And made on a budget of $115 million. So that is By far the biggest budget of any movie we've covered on the show.
Oh, yeah.
And because I love doing this, I love my inflation calculator. That is about $174 million in 2019 money, which is insane amount of money. That's like Marvel movie money these days.
That's insane.
Like Marvel just drops 150 mil on every movie now, and they're like, "Oh, well, no, we'll make it back.
We'll make it back.
We'll get it back."
Gosh.
So we've covered the cast and crew a little bit. We've covered the plot. I mean,
let's talk about the guy behind it that produced it all.
Ooh.
That set this puppy in motion.
You mean Rick McCallum?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's this dude.
It's so dense. That guy.
This guy.
He is.
If you watch the behind the scenes documentary for episode 1, Rick McCallum is George Lucas's champion and will be his champion until either McCallum dies or Lucas just eats him to absorb his soul.
Oh, you see him like gray and get larger throughout these.
George Lucas
ate
him.
He did
horribly.
Totally, like 7 years.
Because he had to put up with George Lucas's crap.
That poor man. I'm so sorry. You did well. You did well.
You
son.
did your best, but eventually Lucas will eat you to absorb your soul because of all the praise you've heaped onto him.
Yep. So what's kicked this off? What motivated George to start the prequels outside of financial gain?
So at this point in the mid-90s, in 93, the Star Wars franchise had, for the most part, been over for about 10 years.
Yeah.
It concluded with Return of the Jedi, with the Empire being destroyed, the saga of Anakin Skywalker being completed and redeeming the Force and the Jedi. So for all intents and purposes, Star Wars was not a thing in the 90s.
No.
But then a lot of comics were coming out, a lot of books were coming out, and what originally sparked Lucas's re-interest in doing the prequel films were a set of trilogy books by Timothy Zahn. They're known as the Thrawn trilogy.
Ooh.
Which center around an admiral, or I think a general in the Empire by the name of Thrawn. And nowadays, Thrawn has kind of become a very popular villain in the Star Wars canon.
Okay.
He's featured prominently, I think, in Rebels and the Clone Wars.
Oh,
I could be mistaken about the Clone Wars. I don't watch the television shows, but
no.
He does feature prominently in one of those, and he's very popular. And that really kind of sparked his interest in redoing Lucas's interest in doing a prequel film.
Yeah.
So in 1993, he announced that he would make the prequels, but he didn't want to make sequels as he felt that saga was concluded.
Yeah.
And he began writing the new trilogy in 1994, and he kind of had to work through the backstory of Anakin first. So he had to show his story of becoming a Jedi.
Yep.
Then it was him being a traitor and being on Tatooine.
Yeah, he wanted the whole thing. He wanted to be Anakin the protagonist and like have it as a tragedy, his rise and fall, becoming Vader.
Although the original working title, and I'm glad he changed this, was The Beginning.
The Beginning. Wow, that's no more basic than that. Really? What's it called, George?
That is the movie making equivalent to a white girl ordering a pumpkin spice latte.
Pumpkin spice latte.
That is the most straightforward title of any beginning of a saga that I've ever heard. Just The Beginning.
It all begins here.
But he changed it to The Phantom Menace to reflect Palpatine hiding his true identity as the Sith Lord and the puppet master of the prequels.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And he was approved for that big budget and it allowed him to tell a more grander and epic story. But given what we've seen with the finished product, do you think this also allowed for lazy filmmaking?
Totally. They gave him complete and utter control. It's kind of like no one questioned him.
He was phoning it in.
He was.
Mm-hmm.
But also you have to remember, he also hadn't directed in quite some time too. So, I mean...
Well, this leads me to my next question. How different do you think this movie would have turned out if somebody else directed it? Because he approached 3 different people to direct it. He approached Ron Howard, who's coming fresh off of directing Apollo 13.
Ooh, solid.
Robert Zemeckis, who had the directing chops with Forrest Gump and Back to the Future, which you've covered on a previous episode.
Yeah.
And his old friend Steven Spielberg, who is a longtime collaborator of George Lucas.
And they all passed.
They all passed on this film.
Well, I can't blame Spielberg. He did Armistead and then Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah,
while
those are
George
two
was
heavy movies.
I mean, come on. Those two or Phantom Menace. But I feel like if he would have had those directors, it maybe would have gone like the original trilogy.
Personally, I believe what made the original trilogy work was that there were different directors for each of the films. Granted, Lucas did direct A New Hope.
Yeah.
But Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back. Richard Marquand did Return of the Jedi. So you had opinions and different viewpoints influencing the other films, and it strengthened them. A lot of people kind of focus on Return of the Jedi as kind of being the weakest of the original trilogies. I don't see that at all. I think it sums up everything perfectly, and it's exciting.
It is.
And it's the peak of visual effects at the time that movie came out. So whatever criticisms you may lobby against Return of the Jedi, you can keep them to yourself because I will not hear it. So Lucas has written a draft of the screenplay, and we get into pre-production.
Yeah.
And we get back to our boy Rick McCallum, who had to begin location scouting. And he was also kind of in charge of world building.
Yes.
So
he was.
He had 3 different planets to really kind of go off. He had Naboo, so he had to design creatures for Naboo. Coruscant, so he had to get a city layout. And then we get Tatooine, where he had to design more city layouts and creature design. So he was kind of knee-deep in world building.
He was. If you watch the behind the scenes, because there's a documentary out there about it, he really goes into it all. They saw so many costume designs. I mean, it was in thousands.
Well, the costumes had to be more elaborate than the originals to emphasize the point that these are a different set of films.
Totally. And he made it as a period piece, so he wanted to
Well, he definitely pulled
that.
off the look of a period piece. I have to say that.
He did. Every single place that they went to, whether it was Coruscant, Naboo, Tatooine, the people rocked those outfits. It was perfect.
He did his best to ensure that when you were on a different world, it felt that way.
Yes, you did feel it.
So filming began in June 1997 and ended on September 30th, 1997. So this is a long shoot. And granted, we're still about a year and a half away from filming.
And they also did pickups in August 98 and February 99.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Like several months before you release it. Oh, we're going to pick up.
Which, by the way, you do not shoot pickups 3 months before a film is due to come out. You don't do that. That is a big time no nowadays.
He did the test screening and people were like, what's going on here?
People were probably throwing popcorn at the screen, which I wouldn't blame them if I had to see a rough cut of this movie.
Oh, gosh.
So filming spanned 2 continents, with most of the film being shot on a soundstage in England. Surprise, surprise. Italy actually stood in for Naboo.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. I like that.
And the production actually returned to Tunisia to film the scenes on Tatooine, which they famously did for A New Hope. They filmed all the Tatooine scenes in Tunisia.
Ooh.
So it was a nice connection to the original trilogies, I thought, reading that.
Yeah. It made you feel.
Yeah, most of the did you know this? Actually, most of the sets were only built up to the height of the actors. And since Liam Neeson is so tall, they had to build the sets higher.
Yeah.
And it added an additional $150,000 to the budget of the film.
All because of Liam Neeson.
All because he's so freaking tall.
He is so freaking tall.
If this acting thing doesn't work out for him, he could probably be like an Irish basketball player.
Probably. But, I'm glad the sets were bigger because that would just be weird without. And they look nice. I was so happy that they actually filmed on location and had some sets sometimes. Because it
adds to any film when you can film on location and make it
practical
feel grounded
effects.
and real.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell the later 2 films, he just kind of said,
Yeah, I don't want a location scout. The budget just went over.
So I'm just going to CGI everything.
Half the budget is dedicated to computer effects. We can't send you to Tunisia again, Rick.
We're just going to CGI it all. But this one, it was nice. The Tatooine and Naboo scenes were pretty good.
Yeah. What were your feelings or expectations heading into the movie as 8-year-old Sean?
8-year-old Sean. All right, 8-year-old Sean didn't even see the film in theaters.
What?
I did not. I actually, I was in our piano room, and I was looking at a newspaper, and I saw Star Wars, it was like, what are the droids? And I was reading, and I was like, Dad, a new Star Wars came out? And he's like, yeah, I saw it. And I was like, how was it? Why didn't you take us? And he's like, it sucks. I don't want to spend money to
Papa
see it
Culp
again.
ruined the movie for you.
Nah, he said it was bad. He's like, I took Chris to go see it to see if it was okay
Different
for
Chris,
you guys.
not me.
Yeah, my brother. And he's like, oh, it was lousy, so I'm not going to go back again. I was like,
Jerk.
what? So I
Thanks,
saw it.
Dad.
I saw it on DVD. I think 2 years later or 3 years later.
That's a long time to wait.
Because
by then, like, another Star Wars movie is coming out.
it was, and I think that's how we saw it in to get us acclimated because I was older and we got like the trilogy and saw the VHS. But I remember when I saw this, I was like, "What is this? What's happening?" I like the battles, but the politics bore me.
I remember being pumped. For this, as an 8-year-old kid who's getting his own generation's Star Wars films.
Yeah,
I was excited for this.
you were stoked for your generation.
I was excited to realize, oh my God, like the people I'm growing up with, we're getting our own set of Star Wars films.
Yeah.
And, well, 8-year-old me was excited. 28-year-old me, not so much anymore.
Same.
So this has now led us into the movie itself. And right away, reading the opening crawl, it pretty much tells us what we're in for from the start. And it is, quote, a literal trade war is what we're getting ourselves into. So right away, the movie is telling us we're going to get bogged down in intergalactic politics.
Which is amazing for a kid's film. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I want to watch.
George Lucas knows how to market to 8-year-olds.
Right?
'Cause this is what 8-year-olds want to see is intergalactic politics crap.
Let's prep them for real life.
So we get the Jedi, who we don't know they're Jedi
No.
at this point. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they're ambassadors, but they're quickly found out,
Yeah.
and they're being sent to a bunch of... They're going to be murdered, supposedly.
Here's a question. I always thought Alec Guinness, like Obi-Wan Kenobi in New Hope, just wore the cloak because he was like on Tatooine for sand. Like I didn't actually think that was like a Jedi thing.
Well, now we see it's a Jedi thing.
Now it is a Jedi thing.
But did you notice, too, as that door is opening up and the room is full of poison gas?
Which they smelled and didn't die.
Yeah, which is another amazing thing. It's just George Lucas writing himself into a hole and then writing himself out of it by saying it's Jedi powers.
Yeah. So their lungs are incredible. They can filter anything.
But did you notice the battle droids that were quaking in fear as the door is opening?
They were quaking in fear.
How messed up is that?
I gotta watch that.
That all these droids are programmed with fear, and then the Jedi come out with their lightsabers and just hack them all.
Just hack them all to shit. And they feel it. These poor droids.
If they're programmed to feel fear, I guarantee they're also programmed to feel pain. They are feeling getting their heads chopped off and being cut in half and being force pushed down hallways.
That's mind blowing. So you're telling me that these robots at this time they were in the process of becoming human?
I hope that's not the case. But
They could feel. Think of their thoughts. What they had. They may have had families.
they had little like baby Roombas roaming around,
That's
and
right.
they had like illegitimate children that were like garbage disposals.
Garbage
Let's not get into the interpersonal dynamics of battle droids.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but I thought that's brilliant that he made them quake and feel pain.
So and after this, the Trade Federation has taken it upon themselves to invade Naboo, and the governor, which I don't understand the hierarchy of all. You know, you have the queen and then you have a governor.
Yeah.
He's like, well, a communications disruption can only mean invasion. Like, well, how many battles have you been in, dude? How do you know this?
I thought Naboo was like a peaceful type of people. What is this guy? What did he come from a different planet?
Well, then the captain, like, we can't go up against the battle-hardened droid army. Like, they're not battle-hardened, dude.
Yeah. Show
like,
me.
you can't program battle-heartedness.
I want to see that movie where this droid just survives and he's battle-hardened. He comes back.
You know, if those droids were programmed with the mentality of a Navy SEAL and the toughness of one, then I would say, yes, absolutely, you can call them battle-hardened, but call it what it is and call it a surplus of battle droids.
That would be, just imagine if these droids were like the robots in iRobot with Will Smith. How quickly.
Oh, this would be a vastly different movie.
Totally different, man. Oh, my gosh.
The robots, John! The robots!
They're coming.
They're coming. They're going to get us.
Oh, my gosh.
So after this, we also meet the first kind of linchpin of the movie. We meet Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, Jesus.
Which, in a movie ripe for criticism, how does he become the linchpin of all of it?
Because I don't think George Lucas understands what made his films funny.
Right? It's comic relief does not come from Jar Jar Binks. It should just come from people realizing that professional actors are being paid to read these ridiculous lines of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And he was hoping to create comic relief for this movie, but it did not need it.
He saw dollar signs.
Yeah, pretty
Chris.
much. And just how racist is Jar Jar Binks, though?
What do you think he's trying to say, Chris?
He's trying to say that, like, I don't like Jamaicans by putting in Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, right. He doesn't like Asian people, so he just like puts stuff on their face.
Okay, well, let's ask this. Did you see a bunch of Asian people in any of these movies?
No, I did not until The Last Jedi.
There you go. It took 8 films to get one Asian person in there.
I know, we got it. Oh my gosh.
We're digressing a little bit. Let's get back to episode 1 here.
I didn't even think. Oh my gosh.
But in watching Liam Neeson be a Jedi Master, I have to say that he is one of the few bright spots in this movie.
Bright spots?
Granted, he does make questionable choices, which I think you've pointed out.
Yes, he's I think he has the worst decision making ever, and he's a terrible gambler.
Yeah, so this week's edition of people not doing their jobs correctly is Qui-Gon Jinn.
This dude is like, what does he do? He tries to mind trick everyone that doesn't give him what he wants. He's like, give me what I want.
He brings an 8-year-old to a battle.
He does. He bets on his life for pod racing. He's like, if he loses, you keep my ship. Wait, what? You're going to strand yourself here?
No. Don't do this.
You're going to strand yourself here? What are you doing? Why don't you want any of the money from the pod race? I didn't understand.
Well, it's like Lucas saved all the, quote, air quotes here, best dialogue for Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
He saved a good chunk of decent dialogue for him, but he doesn't get, Liam Neeson's portrayal of Qui-Gon doesn't get enough credit as kind of, as being a hero in this film.
Being a hero. I just didn't see him as a hero.
I know you have your criticisms of him not being a hero so much, but it is true. I mean, he's meant to serve the Alec Guinness role of the movie.
I wish he would have like trained him, or they did like some more montage.
Yeah, it's a Star Wars film. You can't put in a montage. then it's a Rocky movie.
A montage. That would be amazing. But that's what this film needed.
But I have to say, I would love to see a standalone Qui-Gon film about his rise in the Jedi Order.
Oh, that would be amazing.
But what are the chances we see that now that Disney is kind of shying away from the standalone films?
I would say they'd either have to recast or they'd have to digitally edit him. So he looks younger.
Liam Neeson would have to be in it.
I would love to see that film.
He's not getting that Taken money anymore. He's got to do something.
I mean, Count Dooku was his master. How cool is that, man?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that.
But moving right along with the movie, as they're fleeing Naboo and the ship gets hit and all these droids are trying to fix the ship.
Yeah.
These droids are being shot with lasers and they are screaming as they are being murdered.
They are.
How messed up is that Lucas is telling these droids to scream?
I know.
And all I've ever heard from R2 is a series of beeps and boops, and yet you're going to all of a sudden they can scream?
I don't know.
It bothered me when I was 8 seeing the droids scream, and it bothered me watching this movie again
20 years later
as they're being murdered. When they're screaming,
you know what? That proves a great point. Droid rights. Lucas.
All right, slow down.
Droid rights. Where are the droid rights?
Slow down, L3.
That is what the Senate should be talking about.
Yeah, get this movie bogged down in even more intergalactic politics. That'll help it.
Right.
So they escape Naboo, and they land on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Although this Tatooine is a bit different than previous versions. So how important was it to distinguish this movie's version of Tatooine from other versions we've seen in the past?
I guess it was important. I think they made it look less scrappy. They made it look, I guess.
It reminded me of walking through an old Western town.
Yeah.
Like Jar Jar Binks is Clint Eastwood and just is stealing food from a cart and being confronted by the town baddie in Sebulba.
The character who had more characterization in his like 3 scenes than
Right.
than Obi-Wan. Gosh, that was a pretty good scene though. Walking through, and then they had to find the ship part and everything.
Yeah, they couldn't have shopped around for any of these ship parts and any of.
That's what I mean.
I'm assuming
He's a Jedi. He just believed everyone.
I'm assuming that the ship can still be flown. Granted, the hyperdrive doesn't work, but
Right.
they could have gone to another planet and say like, "I need a new part."
Do you guys have this? Do you take credits? Credits. We
No.
have tons of credits.
Your money's no good here.
Come on. And he has a lightsaber. Couldn't he just take it by force?
He
But-
could have, but
but
that would have attracted attention.
But apparently that's immoral and ethical. But depending and
He's a Jedi.
negotiating lives of slaves.
It's intergalactic nitpicking.
That is true. Fair enough. How did you feel about Anakin building C-3PO?
I don't know if 3PO had to be in this movie entirely.
I don't think he needed to either.
Like 3PO could have just shown up in episode 2 and everybody still would have known who he was.
Yeah,
But I think Anthony Daniels needed a paycheck.
he did need a paycheck.
But before that scene, Anakin and Padme meet for the first time.
Oh, yes, they do. He says, "Are you an angel?"
The love story that will change the galaxy is now underway.
The love story, the most ham-fisted love story that'll change the galaxy.
I can't imagine an 8-year-old having a line like that. That is a classic 8-year-old talking to a teenager pickup line.
I guess.
This is exactly like a child meeting a hot babysitter
A hot babysitter.
and is asking her what she's doing after she's done babysitting him.
Right. But we didn't get it as when we watched it the first time because we're like, oh, he's a kid. Oh, how cute. But like later in hindsight, when you watch it, you're like, nope, this is the same crappy dialogue that he's had in the other later films.
It feels like Jake Lloyd is just reading his lines and Natalie Portman is doing her best to try
She's
and
trying.
salvage the scene. She is trying so hard. God bless her soul.
Gosh, she tried so hard this film. I feel like if we watch it again, we'll see like the different layers, like when she just starts not caring. Like
But-
slowly just, I'm over it.
But this isn't the first scene. This isn't the only scene in the movie where it's intended to have this strong emotional impact on us.
Yes.
But it ends up falling short. This is only a long list of these type of scenes. We have plenty of them in the movie. I mean, up until this point already, we have some of Darth Maul's lines. We have most of Qui-Gon's dialogue. We haven't met Sebulba yet at this point in the movie, but he is characterization. We get more characterization with his lines than we do of Jar Jar in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Later on, we have the Jedi Council scenes, and also when Qui-Gon's making the deal with Watto before the pod racing scene.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these scenes have this intended emotional effect where they're supposed to be these tent poles of the movie where people go back and say, oh, that was a great scene right there.
Yeah.
But oftentimes they fall flat.
They do.
In the scene where Anakin and Padme are meeting, we don't know these characters. We
Exactly.
literally just met Anakin 10 seconds ago, and Natalie Portman is now getting her first decent chunk of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah.
We don't know these characters.
We don't. We know nothing about them. We don't know that she's going to be his future love interest, that she's going to give birth to the kids.
Which at this point is just creepy because she's 16 and he's 9.
Exactly. Like, what are you doing, George?
I never once fell hard in love with my babysitter. And that's pretty much what this is Anakin falling hard for his babysitter.
Falling for his babysitter.
But I
No,
have to ask
can't
this.
think-
How does somebody who is in the same film class as Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and John Milius end up being the most hacky out of all of them?
Well, come on, man. Not everyone can be straight A students.
Yeah. What's that famous phrase? Even C+ students get to be doctors?
That's right. Still a doctor.
Yeah,
with
but would
Cs.
you trust a C+ doctor?
Well, I've never asked them their GPA.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, right? Next time
I
go
mean,
to
it
a
would get that
doctor.
thing on your arm taken care of real quick.
It would, wouldn't it?
Sean really doesn't have a thing on his arm, people.
But, I mean, you compare him to Steven Spielberg, then yeah, he's probably the biggest hack.
Well, at this point, I mean, Steven Spielberg had already bested George Lucas in a number of categories.
So even Coppola's daughter made
Yeah.
better films, like The Virgin Suicides and then Lost in Translation.
I mean, I would even venture to say that Sofia Coppola is a better actor than George Lucas.
When do we see George act?
I don't know, but I'm just going to assume that that's the case. Because I haven't seen him act. We don't have much of a sample size to work with George. I mean, I'm just saying, George, I mean, you got billions. You can do what you want now.
Come on, be in a film, Georgie. We're asking you.
But Lucas he isn't showing off his writing capabilities in this movie, because we see it most often with the dialogue is very hokey, but we also get it a lot with the symbolism, and most specifically, a lot of the symbolism is very religious. Yes. I don't know if you picked up on this when you watched it. I mean, Anakin being the obvious Christ symbol of the movie.
Yeah,
the virgin birth. But there are Christian themes throughout this movie, and they're more overt in any of the films that we've watched previously for this show.
Like Darth Maul being the devil with his horns and red face.
Well, even Palpatine, too. I mean, I think Palpatine is even more symbolic of the devil, and Darth Maul being more representative of his minions.
Oh, like a demon. Mm-hmm. I gotcha. Yeah.
And we also see Naboo as kind of this Garden of Eden.
Wait, but then who's God? Is it George?
God is easily the Force.
God is the Force?
God is the Force / Jesus. And the Jedi Council fits in as like the 12 apostles.
Okay.
And I've mentioned this before. I have no problem with religion, but if you're going to do it in a movie, you can do it in a way that's not ham-fisted like this. Because we have seen ham-fisted religious symbolism in movies before. We just saw it last time when we did 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis as the Christ-like sacrificial lamb at the end of the movie. There is a better way to do religious imagery in your film, and this is not the case. So we're now introduced to Anakin Skywalker, who will eventually become Darth Vader, but we don't know that yet because we're only in episode 1. We're trying to keep this contained. But leading up to this, and the only way for Qui-Gon and the Naboo party to get their ship repaired is to have Anakin enter this pod race, get them money, and get their part back. And this leads us now to the pod racing scene.
Yes.
The scene that should have been the climax of the movie.
Yeah. That's an interesting take. It should have been the climax of the film.
Well, it starts about 55 minutes in and ends about 1 hour and 11 minutes. Mm-hmm. So this movie could have been an hour and a half long if there was a lot that was taken out, and they go to Naboo and they fix everything, and boom, movie's over.
Wow. You know what? If he focused an entire film about Tatooine and finding this boy, that would have been 10 times a better film.
Well, it would have done exactly what he achieved to do. It would have done a different Star Wars movie. He still would have accomplished the feel of a period piece. He still would have his battles in it.
Yes. But you'd have a clear-cut
there is a better movie than the one we got. This scene is about 16, 17 minutes long, but it doesn't do anything to the plot.
No.
It didn't do it 20 years ago, and it doesn't do anything now.
Well, it just gets Anakin away from his mom and gets them, back towards Coruscant so they can give Palpatine control of the Senate.
Regardless of how this scene ends, though, Qui-Gon is going to get Anakin off the planet. He's going to train him to become a Jedi. Mm-hmm. They're going to escape the planet, regardless of how the pod racing scene turns out.
Wait, but if he died, he wouldn't have escaped with him. Didn't he need to win?
He's not going to die.
Or was Qui-Gon using the Force?
This is like saying, well, what if he dies? And this is like watching Back to the Future and suggesting that Marty McFly dies, even though we know there's a part 2.
He doesn't come back.
We know Anakin is not going to die.
Yeah.
Because we have to get to episodes 2 and 3.
Exactly, because there's no cost to the film. So it's like, oh, well, we know he's going to win. If only it was better writing.
But the scene is so full of lens flares. We get Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to be in the movie either.
No. He was just called all these different characters.
And because he's so CGI'd, there's no effect to it.
No.
He's just like, oh, great. He might as well not even be in the movie because he's already not there in real life anyway.
Yeah. Well, what's the point of him being in it? Is he like? I just didn't. I didn't like that. Did you notice
even he's bored? Yeah. In the scene, he falls asleep and he flicks some poor little lizard creature off the ledge, presumably to its death.
Exactly, because George just has to throw it in, man.
And then we also see Jawas too.
Yeah, we saw Jawas.
We see
they're
the
picking them off.
Yeah, Houdini, and they just race on by.
Just got to throw as much crap in from the original series that we can.
Do you remember that a good portion of the marketing for this movie was devoted to the pod racing scene?
The pod racing, yes, and lightsaber battles.
I wanted more of the pod racing. I enjoyed playing the Nintendo 64 game.
Oh, you played that game too?
Watching this. I love that game.
Same. Oh
There's actually a mod out now. Somebody remade the game in the Unreal Engine 4.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want an HD update of Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
That's what we want. That's what we want, George.
Are you listening, LucasArts?
Just give us
I don't think
the
LucasArts
game.
is even a thing anymore now with Disney buying it.
No, probably not. They're like Telltales. They're just like a skeleton crew.
But also, too, this scene is full of red shirts.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many pod racers who I am presuming that they die.
They
because those wrecks are epic.
Dude, those engines are going.
Yeah,
probably hundreds of miles an hour.
We get that poor guy in the cave who turns and goes, and then it just is killed in a fireball. Did you know Did you see there's actually a deleted scene where that racer had a family with little kids?
Oh my god!
He had a wife and little kids, and they're all now without a father and a dad, and a husband.
Thanks, George. Widowing family. The kids film, best kids film ever.
It's bogged down in intergalactic politics, and people are dying Dale Earnhardt style in fiery wrecks.
God, that's not funny.
It's not funny, but it is. It's also it's not funny in the sense that ILM also used NASCAR wrecks to better animate the pod racing wrecks.
well, they took it from NASCAR, man. Pod racing is essentially NASCAR in space.
But those racers, I am assuming they don't come with airbags.
No.
They're all dead.
No, they're flipping that alligator guy that the whole thing just went pop, pop, pop.
The only rival pod racer who's left alive is Sebulba. And even he just goes, poop, I got wrecked by a human.
Exactly. The only human to ever finish, too.
Really? And he was the only human to finish a race?
He was also the only human, I believe they mentioned in the film, to only, enter in the race and, fly a pod race. Which is crazy. You'd think that that's it. The human race, they're only going to get an 8-year-old child.
I mean, he was boasting, I'm the only human who can do it, but I just felt like that was a 9-year-old brag. When you're 8 or 9, you say, I'm the fastest there is, and then you watch the Olympics and you're just proven wrong.
You mean that was like Watto saying he's the only dealer with the part?
Yeah, this movie is full of, I don't want to say humble brags because they're not humble at all.
No, these guys aren't humble at all. But
Anakin wins the pod race.
Mm-hmm.
All is good. They got the part back. They're going to take Anakin off the ship. And then we arrive at what I like to call the dual sunset scene. This is the scene where Anakin now has to leave his mother and go train to become a Jedi.
The whole reason why George cast a child was for this scene.
But like most of the other intended emotional scenes in this movie, this falls flat on its face. We don't feel anything when Anakin leaves his mother. At least I didn't.
No.
There's a better scene within this scene. It could have been done a lot better. It could have been shot better. It could have been written better. It could have been acted better. Qui-Gon doesn't have to be in the scene much at all. You keep the wise dialogue to him. You don't do the awkward 3PO goodbye. And you focus on Anakin and his mother. That is who the scene should be about. That's who this moment is all about.
Yeah, that's the whole buildup.
His mother tells him, you need to go and don't look back. And the music swells up, but we don't feel anything. And the reason why I call this the dual sunset scene is because we have those type of scenes in every Star Wars movie where the character is either looking forlorningly at the sky or a sunset or a sunrise, and the music swells up, and we are left to wonder, what is this character's future? That is what this scene is intended to be, and we don't achieve that. And this is a scene that also suffers from a lack of characterization because we don't really know Anakin's mother at this point.
Well, like we were saying off the air, we don't even know if she's a slave and what her occupation as a slave is. Like, she's able to go to a pod racing event. Like, she's always there. Like,
for all we know, she's a farmhand.
Exactly.
She's a paid farmhand. We don't know if she's still a slave because she's home all the time.
Like, we don't know.
If she were actually a slave, she wouldn't be home.
Or I guess maybe that's her thing. I don't know. Who
Is
knows?
she's just a slave to her own home and is just
she's
making sure all the
trapped.
dust is kept out?
Right? They just confine her to her house, or maybe she like cleans the apartments.
I mean,
that
woman,
they
you
live
got
in.
sand floors. I don't think you should be worrying about dust. But this is also, too, where we see a failure in the pacing of the movie.
Yeah.
Because we are just coming off this epic pod racing scene, and then we're brought to the emotional floor with Anakin being forced to say goodbye to his mother. We are all over the place throughout this movie. We are all... And the editing is disjointed.
Mm-hmm.
It's schlocky. We get these 20-second snippets of battles or other storylines, and then we're right back to some other storyline that we're being forced to care about.
With no prior knowledge of any of the characters or anything.
We see this, I think, more clearly in the climax of the movie,
Oh, totally.
where there's so many moving parts to it. We have the Gungans fighting the droid army.
Mm-hmm.
We have the starfighters going up to try and defeat the control ship. At some point, we have the Jedis breaking off to go fight Darth Maul, and we have Padme's and her team's quest to go corner the Viceroy.
Yeah.
We have 4 different storylines that we're supposed, I think it's 5 actually, that we're supposed to keep track of.
Yeah, and it all
How
changes.
are we supposed to do that? We
you
get these
can't.
15, 20-minute snippets
Mhm.
between each of those storylines, and they're all supposed to meet at one point, but it's
just
not
too much for your brain to handle.
It's too much to handle. It really is sometimes. I will say this, though. There are parts of the climax that I really enjoyed. I thought the beginning where that little cruiser pulls up and shoots that laser blast into the tank and how the initial like courtyard fight starts, I thought that was actually done very well.
Yeah,
But then it all just kind of drops.
it does. Well, it's hard to like care about a battle when you don't really care about the characters, and you know, it's really tough.
Well, the
to,
plan, I think they forgot the plan at one point because remember they're in the hangar and they just cleared it out and Padme goes, I guess the Viceroy is in the throne room. Like, where else did you think he would be? Didn't you like say before all this started that the plan was to get to the throne room and not the hangar?
She was just making it up. She was doing a cob, just flying off the cuff. She just said that to
She's pulling a Dom.
She's pulling a Dom.
I don't think that was the case. That's just George Lucas not knowing how to write himself out of a hole.
No, he did not.
He had to get him. His way of getting them out of the throne room was trying to just write a throwaway line. And like, dude, like literally 6 minutes ago, she just said that the plan is to get to the throne room.
Gosh. And then we all just accept the Jedi battle. There's like 30 people in that hangar and one Jedi. You don't think 25 lasers coming at Darth Maul? Think he defended all?
That lightsaber is pretty cool, though. It's a dual-edged
Doesn't matter
lightsaber.
if it's cool. It's not going to stop 25 bolts coming at it. And then she's like, we'll just take the long way around. Isn't that the primary objective, to get to the Viceroy? But you're going to take the...
Then they use those ascension guns. Like, you should have led with those.
Exactly.
That would have just made this so
Yes,
short.
I know. When I saw that, I'm like, wait, now you bust out the bat? Like, come on, man. Now you're going to be Batman?
They're all just become Adam West Batman.
Yeah.
It's like, I know, I have the gadget for this, my young chum.
How crazy of a Star Wars movie would that be?
But speaking of the lightsaber fight, I mean, for me, up until this point in the Star Wars films, I thought this was the best lightsaber battle.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of choreography in there, but I just didn't care because I just didn't know anything about the characters.
We didn't know anything about Darth Maul. Like I said, we should have gotten more dialogue from Darth Maul.
Yeah, I watched it again and I'm like, dude, he says like 2 things.
We get more from Darth Maul in the television spin-offs and in Solo
than we get
in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even argue to say that his characterization in Solo is better than in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and you get
because I want to
3-minute
see that
scene
movie where he becomes a crime lord.
Yes, this is the movie. We want to see that movie. Come at us,
Disney, if you're listening,
give us that movie.
We want that movie big time. Give the people what they want.
But it's just that scene, the laser, like as a kid, I loved that lightsaber battle. I'm like, dude, this is amazing. But as an adult, it's tough for me to care because like the visuals, it's very stimulating. But when you don't care about the characters, like when the original trilogy, they had the lightsaber battles, it was interesting because you cared about them. They had that background. It was all about the internalization. There were costs. But this, from the beginning, it's like, this doesn't need to happen. They could shoot him.
The one character
it was literally to get to killing Qui-Gon. That was the whole point.
Yeah, one character that we come to care about in the movie is killed.
Yeah.
And this is nothing new in the Star Wars films. Anytime there's a first entry in any of the trilogies, the hero or the mentor is always killed. And so anybody who is shocked at that happening, like, I hate to say it, like, that's just, like, it happened in A New Hope, it's gonna happen in The Phantom Menace.
But once again, I feel like he just recycled stuff from the original trilogy. Like Alec Guinness's character, Obi-Wan Kenobi dying in A New Hope, was to provide that distraction and help Luke later on. If he survived, it wouldn't make sense.
Well, that's why we still hold up Alec Guinness's portrayal of Obi-Wan as a true hero of the franchise, is because everything he's done has been in service of Luke and the Force.
Yeah.
Everything. Even his actions in the later movies is true. But in this, Qui-Gon is killed and is burned afterwards, and nothing.
Nothing.
There is nothing. We don't get any more Qui-Gon unless we get a standalone film in the future, which I don't think will happen.
He is voiced in the second one. Like, he's like when Anakin's like, spoilers, I guess, when Anakin's killing all the Tusken Raiders, you like hear they brought Liam Neeson back to like have a voice where he's like, stop, no. And then I guess they did a scene with him in the third one where he was going to teach Obi-Wan how to do the Force Ghost.
And I think that got cut, though.
Yeah, they cut it. Which, I mean, they tried to bring him back.
But Anakin finally gets his hero moment.
Yeah.
He blows up the control ship and he escapes. For the most part, it seems...
By accident?
Yeah, purely by accident. When Luke did it, it was actually on skill and use the Force. With him, it was just like, I'm going to pull the joystick as hard as I can.
Yeah, see what
so this was like a kid accidentally winning in Mario Kart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you think about it, this movie is pretty much like a babysitting romp where the 9-year-old got loose and ended up defeating the town criminal.
Oh my gosh. Is this like Home Alone?
This is exactly
this
like
is
Home Alone.
Alone in space.
This is Home Alone in space with lightsabers.
Oh my
where
gosh.
Anakin is Macaulay Culkin's character and Joe Pesci and his cohort are the droid army, the Trade Federation, and Anakin defeats them. Accidentally.
Wow.
But
thanks
George Lucas, you pretty much remade Home Alone.
Wow. I've never thought of it like that.
Now you did.
No, I did.
And then also too, we see Obi-Wan starting to become the hero we get in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
He's now set along down this path to train Anakin and get the galaxy down this path too. Yeah,
he keeps his word and says, hey, this is what I'm going to do.
But the ending, much like the pacing of the movie, is all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the battle is ended. Unfortunately, Qui-Gon has died. The Trade Federation viceroys are supposedly being sent off to the Senate to face for their crimes. Palpatine gets his pedophile moment with Anakin. That one was real creepy when he was saying, we'll be watching your career with great interest. Like, okay, Panel Van.
Like what?
Panel Van Palpatine.
Panel Van Palpatine. It's like, dude, do you even know who this kid is?
It's like they went to central casting and picked out a creepy old white politician.
A British white politician, too. But I understand what you mean by the pacing.
But then but right after that, we go into Yoda talking with Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, you can teach Anakin, but even he's warning of the growing threat that they seem to miss in the Force.
Yeah.
And then, so we're happy for a little bit, but then we're brought right back down to that emotional floor again with Qui-Gon's funeral. And even then, there's a bit of like a twinge of hope to it. You know, when Obi-Wan looks at Anakin and says, you will be a Jedi. And then we're brought right back down with that sense of dread with Windu and Yoda talking to each other about the Sith threat.
Yeah.
And then we have that shot that lingers on Palpatine. We're brought right back down to that emotional floor and then brought right back up with the big old celebration with the Gungans.
It literally takes you on a ride.
I don't know what to feel in this scene. I don't know if I should be terrified for future films or if I should feel hopeful because of this last celebration scene. This movie is all over the place emotion-wise. I don't know what to make of it most times.
The last 20 minutes, too, they just shove it in. Because while I was watching it, I'm looking at the end, and I'm like, dude, in 25 minutes, they're going to fill in all these battles, all this emotion, and just...
You know, to be honest, I think we named this show because of this movie. We are literally being force-fed a Star Wars film.
We are.
Like I said, there is a good movie within this 2-hour, 15-minute long romp.
Yeah.
But it is bogged down in intergalactic politics. There's disjointed editing and pacing all over the place. The CGI is overdone.
And then there's our favorite, the midichlorians. Tell me, Chris, how do you feel about George Lucas with the Force?
He ruined the Force.
He didn't clear the mucky waters of your disillusionment?
No. By turning the Force into bacteria, now means that no one is special.
No one is special.
No one is special. You know that old adage, if everyone is special, no one is?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much saying you either got it or you don't.
You either got the hep or you don't. You either got the
do
disease.
You want the hep? Because I don't want that.
I guess in Star Wars, if you want the hep, then it's good. Oh, my gosh.
He ruined the Force.
He did, especially the idea that Anakin was created out of, like, midichlorians.
Just give him a dad and make it simple.
I know.
Like, do they not teach the birds of the bees in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away?
I wish they did.
I wonder what that version of the birds and the bees is.
Oh my gosh, I would love to be there for that conversation.
Just to see
Anakin
a bunch of traumatized younglings in the Jedi council room just being instructed on how to make a baby.
Right? Well, they can't. They can't have sex.
Yeah,
Jedis are not able to do that.
Which would instantly turn me off to being a Jedi. Not going to lie about that.
You're basically like a monk.
No, well,
that can wield a lightsaber.
That turns out so well in later movies.
Yeah, right.
So the movie is over. Let's talk about post-production and the release of the movie for a little bit.
Sure.
So filming actually concluded in 1997, and the movie came out in 1999. So that means there were about two full years of post-production going on in this movie. That's how long it took to edit it. There's about 2,000 visual effect shots, which at the time... Yeah, I can see that taking about a year and a half to do.
There's so many. They just didn't even... They had two or three crews that just worked endlessly on 24-hour shifts.
But yet, where we saw this in Back to the Future, granted the post-production time was a lot shorter, but that team was also working 24/7 around the clock to get the movie out. Granted, Back to the Future didn't have nearly as much visual effects shots as this movie does, and we're going to do our best not to compare Back to the Future to Episode 1, because Back to the Future would just kill that in a bracket.
That is very true.
But also, John Williams returned to score the film like he had done with the previous Star Wars films, which the score for this one just kind of falls flat for me, with the exception of Duel of the Fates. Everything else is just kind of, it's your standard Star Wars music. Like, we have the music for the opening crawl and some other music motifs. Like, we have the Force theme and we have a theme for Anakin, but there's really not much else that's memorable in the score.
No, you're not going to be humming it as you leave.
No, of course not.
Duel of the Fates.
I was actually blown away by looking up the marketing for this movie.
Oh, they marketed the heck out of it.
There was $20 million devoted to the marketing of the movie.
Oh, yeah. I remember when the first poster came out. You just saw it with little Annie standing there with the Darth Vader behind him. I mean, they just, boom, pushed that out there.
I guess the teaser trailer dropped in November of 1998.
Okay.
It crashed a bunch of servers when people were downloading it online.
Holy cow. I'm sure.
But also, this was the best for me, was how movie trailers used to work was...
Sure.
You would get the film reel from the studio, and there was always one trailer that was attached to the movie. So whatever trailers you would see in the early 90s were up to the discretion of the theater to play.
Oh.
And the last trailer that you saw before the movie was the one that the studio wanted you to see.
Okay.
So when movies were coming out in the fall of 1998, and Episode 1 was the trailer attached to those movies, people would pay full price tickets just to see the Episode 1 trailer and then walk out of the theater.
What?
Because they were done.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious.
That's insane.
You know, that actually happened with another movie that I love.
What?
1989's Batman by Tim Burton.
People did that for
They would actually carve out screen times just to show the Batman trailer, and people would pay admission to see it.
That's insane.
But this is the power of a good trailer, though.
I guess. But I mean, nowadays, it's not like that. Especially,
I think people were more excited for the fact that we're getting our first Star Wars movie in 16 years.
Yeah.
Because watching the teaser trailer now,
no,
it practically gives away most of the movie.
Well, I guess I guess, you know what? Actually, the equivalence of that now is like going to Star Wars Celebration and like flying down to Disney and paying the $100 to like watch the teaser trailer. Because I know they're dropping that next month.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best actually to not watch that because I want to go into the new Star Wars movie fresh and not knowing any of the visual cues.
Just blind out.
I have a friend Phil who does that. Anytime there's a new Marvel movie out and there's a trailer on, he will cover his eyes just in effort to avoid seeing anything that might happen in the movie.
You know, that's actually kind of brilliant because then you just go in blind without any expectations.
If there was a new Batman movie, I would do that in a minute.
Totally.
But we're not getting that soon.
No, we are not. But you know what? Actually, I'll back that. That makes sense why people would pay just to see it. That's pretty cool, though.
Well, this actually leads us into This Week in Toxic Fandom.
Yes.
So the movie was originally scheduled for release in May of 1999. And this was one of the first movies that allowed for pre-sales. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
So tickets were not allowed to be sold until 2 weeks before the release.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a 12-ticket limit that was sold on a first-come, first-served basis.
Yeah.
So some scalpers would go in, buy up as many tickets as they could, and would sell each individual ticket for up to $100 each.
$100.
Yeah, even the studio had to get involved and say, no, you cannot do this.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see a movie?
Just to see a movie.
Wow, this movie must have been crazy when it first came out.
This movie was crazy. Well, again, it was the first Star Wars movie we were getting in 16 years. It did look pretty.
So everyone freaked. They were yoked.
We didn't know what we were getting into at the time because the teaser trailer showed a ton. It showed the pod races. It showed Samuel L. Jackson. It showed the lightsaber battles. It showed all the cool parts of the movie. It didn't, and we got some snippets of the intergalactic politics,
dude.
So it showed people enough to get butts in seats.
What if the trailer represent? What do you think what a true trailer would represent this film as? What would your trailer be if it was actually what this film was, not like all the pod racing and
it would have to show the ham-fisted Christian imagery.
Yeah.
It'd have to show the pod racing because that is the best part of the movie. But also you have to let people know what they're getting into by showing the intergalactic politics.
Like 2 minutes of just intergalactic politics.
Yeah, let people know that they're in for a 2-hour, 15-minute pretty much debate. This is like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh.
But despite the mixed reception of the movie, it broke a ton of box office records.
Yeah.
I think it had like biggest opening weekend at the time. A lot of those records actually were held at one point by The Lost World Jurassic Park, Titanic, and Independence Day at the time.
Oh, it made $924 million.
So that's it. That was in its initial release. So that was the highest grossing film of 1999. Do you know what else came out in 1999?
No.
I had to look this up.
What?
So The Sixth Sense came out in 1999.
Oh, sweet.
Toy Story 2, The Matrix, Tarzan, the Disney version, The Mummy, Notting Hill, which actually came out the same weekend as Episode 1.
Really?
Yeah, it ended up being in the top 10 grossing films of that year.
Oh, rock on.
The World Is Not Enough, a James Bond film, and American Beauty.
Oh,
so 1999 was actually a pretty good year in films, period. We got a couple decent sci-fi films from that. We got The Matrix, which is on our list. Don't ask us about that. But this movie was also given a 3D re-release in 2012, which took in an additional $100 million.
So now it's over $1 billion.
Yeah, it is. And I'm always fascinated by these facts. It was the 11th film in history to gross $1 billion.
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, we get $1 billion movies, it seems like, every month.
Oh, yeah.
But when your film can say you were among the first 15 to do that, I think that's pretty neat. So, as much crap as we have given George Lucas in this episode, he deserves some credit for trying to do something new with the Star Wars franchise. I mean, granted, the criticisms he's lobbied nowadays seem a bit like, no, you need to chill.
Well, he's just like that crazy old man.
Yeah, he's cranky.
He's just crazy old man.
I think he wishes he was still making movies because he got $4 billion from the deal with Disney, and we were promised he would be releasing independent films left and right, and we haven't done that.
No.
I'm pretty sure now he's just counting all his billions out like $10 at a time.
Well, he was trying to take that money and open up a Star Wars museum in Chicago.
Yeah, and then
then that did not work. So now
people got all PO'd about that for whatever reason.
The parking lot, I think. But this film actually, it was nominated for 3 Oscars,
which were
Best Sound Effects Editing, Best Visual Effects, and Best Sound.
And lost all of those to The Matrix.
Yes, because The Matrix is amazing.
Yeah, The Matrix. This wasn't even the best sci-fi movie that came out in 1999.
Come on. The Matrix blew everyone's mind.
However,
they were like, what?
The Phantom Menace was nominated for 7 Golden Raspberry Awards.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So we don't have any Oscar wins, but we've got Golden Raspberries, baby.
All right, throw them at me. Which ones?
I actually didn't write them down.
Trash. I think, we can for sure say that Jake Lloyd was one of those
Jake
Raspberry.
Lloyd and Natalie Portman, I'm sure, got some type of
Jar
Raspberry
Jar
Award.
Binks.
Yeah.
Those
You know who loved this movie, though?
Who?
Roger Ebert.
No way.
He gave the movie 3.5 stars.
What?
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
He was probably happy that they made another one.
I would imagine that George Lucas or somebody at 20th Century Fox kind of paid him off to do a good review.
Kind of like Rotten Tomatoes.
Ebert loved the original films, too.
He did.
So it stands to reason that he would also love this.
I would be curious to see what his ratings were for the entire series.
Well, we would have to do some kind of aggregate, but we can save that, though.
Yeah, I would be curious.
But this also has a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. But
yeah,
personally, I don't give a ton of weight to Rotten Tomatoes score.
No, they're not. Well, I don't know. With this, was Rotten Tomatoes around when it came out?
No, it was not around.
Yeah, so this
Rotten
is kind
Tomatoes
of more...
really didn't become a thing. It really didn't become prominent in people's movie
2010s.
going. No, I think until 2016 when Batman vs. Superman came out.
That was when it was really... Because now they post it on the trailer. They'll be like 98%.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We just saw that recently with Bohemian Rhapsody. We saw that with Captain Marvel, which I'm glad Rotten Tomatoes finally did away with the whole pre-review thing.
Oh, that's so trash.
Yeah, because people were trying to do that with Black Panther, and it turns out it was just a bunch of incel racist people. And they were trying to do that with Captain Marvel, which, again, I stand by my theory that it's just incel racist because you're upset that Captain Marvel won't sleep with you.
What?
People were trashing the movie because it's a woman and women don't deserve to be in this role, and but what about, dude, you're wrong on all fronts.
What about Salt? Angelina Jolie, all of her films that she's done.
I can't attest to Salt because I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh, Chris, you got to watch Salt.
Yeah, I think we already gave people the non-sci-fi wreck of the week. Let's not overload them too much.
All right, that's true. In comparison to Heat, Salt isn't Heat, but it's still kick butt.
Getting back to the Phantom Menace, though, I mean, this is one of the few movies where I would say that a lot of fans' critics are in line with the critics' criticisms.
Well, except now with Toxic Fandom, they're rethinking it.
Well,
there are reports
with
now.
J.J. Abrams being more involved with Disney and the making of future Star Wars films, I would love to see a J.J. Abrams edit of the Phantom Menace. I think he would actually get his editing team together and come up with a better movie. Because if George Lucas just seemed to have a hand in everything, and it really shows in this movie.
Well, it's just an experience from directing. He didn't direct for almost 20 years.
Well, filmmaking,
when no one tells you no.
Filmmaking, like any other business venture, is meant to be a collaborative process.
Totally.
And when you are the only voice that is the be-all and end-all of every single decision made, and you aren't allowing for other opinions to be heard or voiced, you have a problem.
Yeah.
And it shows. There were so many people who were lining up to kiss George Lucas's butt or just work with him because he had this aura about him as being George Lucas, that no one was willing to voice a dissenting opinion about the choices he was making regarding the visual effects, regarding characterization, acting, dialogue. And we brought this up earlier in the show. If this movie had a script doctor or if there was a different director at the helm, this movie would have turned out much better than it did.
Or if the actors just like would say, no, this sucks. Because in A New Hope, they did, like Alec Guinness was totally so many times with his lines. He's like, I'm not saying that. This doesn't make sense. Even the whole, I know, I love you, I know.
That was ad-libbed.
That was totally ad-libbed. If you didn't know, Harrison Ford was going to say, I love you too. And then after like 10 takes, the actor got so pissed off about it. The director just said, well, just say what comes to mind. He's like, I know. And it worked. Now it worked.
It's now an iconic part of that movie.
And even online, you can solo someone in real life by saying, I know, if they say I love you. Oh, gosh.
But for you, where does this rank among the main Star Wars films? And I'm talking just the main story ones, not the standalone films. Where does this rank for you, at least?
Like in the main... Oh, I would say this is probably, for me, the worst one.
Yeah.
By far. It just... You can't gain any context into the characters. You have to know the Star Wars universe to gain insight. And there's no protagonist.
Producer Jeremy brought up a good point when we were off air by saying if you had seen the originals heading into this, you knew what to expect.
Yeah.
But if you were coming in cold, not knowing one iota what Star Wars was about, you were lost.
Totally.
You had no idea what was going on.
Who are these hippies wearing robes?
Who are all these people that I'm supposed to care about?
Yeah.
Why is the guy who looks like he has dreadlocks overly racist?
Why are these robots shaking in fear? Like,
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Like I said, if you've programmed them with fear, you've programmed them to feel pain.
Robot rights, baby.
All right. So I think we've now reached the portion of the show where we can review the film.
Totally.
And it sounds like we've done that already, but this is our be-all and end-all review, I would say. Now, when this movie came out in 1999, I was excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
This was my generation getting a Star Wars series. I was excited. I was going to go with my dad. We were going to have a great time. 8-year-old me loved this movie. However, 28-year-old me doesn't love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has not aged well. The dialogue is hokey.
Mm-hmm.
The visual effects are way overdone. Most of the characters come off as caricature racist stereotypes, and a lot of the symbolism is heavy-handed.
Yeah.
It pains me to do it, but for me, this would have to be a wooden watch.
Yeah.
It is the worst among the prequel films, and it could have benefited from outside opinions. And I want to see a re-edit of this movie supervised by Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams.
I wouldn't want to see any of that. I want it to die.
I don't want any new visual effects. I don't want any new characters added in. I just want a complete re-edit of the movie.
Oh, I wouldn't want to watch it ever again.
So you're also in the wouldn't watch camp?
God, yes. The only time I watched this was I got my wisdom teeth out.
Well,
I was
you were forced to for this show too.
Well, and this, but that was 9 years ago was the last time I watched this, just because I didn't remember how bad it was.
Yeah,
but no, this is a would not watch.
This wasn't the best movie when it came out. It's not the best sci-fi film that came out in 1999, and this is by far not the best Star Wars film.
I think my life would improve dramatically if I never saw this film again.
You can just eternal sunshine of the spotless mind this out of your brain. You would do it.
I think it would be incredible to just forget it existed.
Okay. Never heard it put like that before.
I would only talk about this film if I wanted to explain to people how films should not be made. Then maybe I would reference it.
Oh boy.
But yeah, that's my review.
Well, we've actually been in agreement on all the movies we've watched so far, and really this is no surprise that we have both agreed on wouldn't watch for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
I've only met one person in my life that said it was great and better than the originals.
For the sake of podcasting purposes, they shall remain anonymous.
They will remain anonymous.
So we're not going to draw our ire.
No.
So with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace in the bag, what do you say we pick our next movie?
I'm down.
All right, we're going to enlist the help of our very friendly random number generator artificial intelligence.
Major Samantha.
There she is. And this time she has selected beep, boop, beep. We have got number 49, which is a 2011 British film starring
Ooh.
John Boyega and Jodie Whittaker. It is Attack the Block.
I have no idea what that is.
You have never seen this?
No.
All right. Well,
This sounds kind of cool, though. It's not indie, probably.
yeah, on the box, it's described as Goonies meets Gremlins.
Oh, wow.
With aliens, though.
Cool. I'm down.
So, yeah, we will be looking forward to watching that next week. But we have a special treat in addition.
Oh.
We are doing a special bonus review episode of the new superhero horror film Brightburn, directed by David Yarovesky and produced by James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2.
Isn't it that horror superhero film that's coming out?
Yeah,
It's going to change the tide.
It's based on the premise that what if a Superman-like child came to Earth, but instead of being this beacon of hope and light and truth and justice in the American way, he decides to become a serial killer.
Oh, man. This is awesome. Just annihilation.
Sean gets to act out some of his darker fantasies.
Well, there's like a Superman comic out there where Hitler gets him, and then he uses Superman to like take over the world.
That's awful.
I know, right? But it's kind of cool.
I don't want to think
always
about
see
that.
superheroes as like saving the day, but instead he's gonna come and eat you.
I don't know if he's going to eat anybody. That
is true.
All right. So be on the lookout next week in your feeds for 2 episodes. Like I said, one, it will be the special bonus review episode of Brightburn, and we will have Attack the Block. So watch along with us. And please, if you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. It helps drive us up the charts as well as help people like you find the show. We are across the spectrum of social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Force Fed Sci-Fi. You can check out and download episodes at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts. And please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Finally, you can check out our website, forcefedsci-fi.com, that's all one word, for show notes and links to all of our social media. So for myself and Sean Culp, we'll see you next time. The Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast is written and hosted by Sean Culp and Chris Rupp. Website design and associate producer is Jeremy Keski. Artwork designed by Mike Berger. Theme music composed and performed by Custom Anthem.